Ever wondered why we can't just print unlimited money? It's a question that might seem simple on the surface, but opens up a world of economic principles and historical lessons. To understand it, we first need to understand what money is. Money in itself has no intrinsic value. A dollar bill or a coin is just a piece of paper or metal until we attribute value to it. This value comes from our collective belief that it can be exchanged for goods and services. This phenomenon is known as the Tinkerbell effect, named after the fairy in Peter Pan who exists only as long as children believe in her. Like Tinkerbell, money exists because we believe it exists. But it wasn't always like this. In the past, money was a tangible commodity with intrinsic value, like gold or silver. This type of money is known as commodity money. Over time, as societies evolved, so did our concept of money. We moved from using commodity money to representative money, which was backed by a commodity. For example, a banknote could be exchanged for a specific amount of gold. In the modern era, we use what is known as fiat money. This is money that has no intrinsic value and is not backed by any physical commodity. Instead, its value comes from the trust and confidence we place in the government that issues it. This evolution from commodity to fiat money highlights the intangible nature of money's value. It's not the paper or metal that holds value, but our belief in what it represents. It's a system built on trust. So, while the idea of printing unlimited money might seem like an easy solution to economic problems, the reality is far more complex. The value of money is intricately tied to our belief in its worth, and that belief hinges on careful management and trust in the system. So, money, in its essence, is a belief system, a collective agreement. Now that we understand this, we can delve deeper into why we can't just print unlimited money and the economic principles that guide this. Scene script. Let's dive into some basic economic principles. Money, as we know, is a fascinating entity. It's not just a piece of paper or a coin. It's a symbol of value, a measure of worth, and a medium of exchange. But what happens when there's more of it in circulation? Well, that's where things get interesting. You see, printing more money doesn't necessarily increase a country's wealth. If the amount of goods and services available for purchase in an economy doesn't grow at the same pace as the money supply, we end up with more money chasing the same number of goods. And this, my friends, is what we call inflation. Inflation is like a hidden tax that eats away at your purchasing power. When there's too much money in circulation, prices tend to rise. This is because sellers start charging more for their goods and services, knowing that buyers have more money to spend. It's a classic case of supply and demand. When demand outpaces supply, prices go up. But what about the value of currency? Well, that's another side of the story. The value of a nation's currency is often determined by its economic health, political stability, and the level of interest rates. When a country prints more money, it increases the supply of its currency. If demand for the currency doesn't keep up with supply, its value can plummet. This can lead to a shift in exchange rates. More of the currency being available means other countries can buy more of it, causing the currency's value to decrease relative to other currencies. In turn, this can impact everything from the cost of imports and exports to the amount of foreign investment a country receives. So you see, the dynamics of money supply, economic output, and demand all play a crucial role in determining the value of money. It's a delicate balancing act, and one that requires careful management. In other words, more money doesn't necessarily mean more value. Hyperinflation. It sounds like a superpower, but it's a nightmare for economies. Picture this. Zimbabwe, 2008. The government, desperate to cover its expenditures, started printing money indiscriminately. The result? An inflation rate that soared to an almost incomprehensible 89.7 sextillion% per month. Yes, you heard it right, sextillion. That's 21 zeros after the number. Zimbabweans saw their life savings vanish overnight. The price of a loaf of bread skyrocketed from $1 Zimbabwean dollar to 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollars in just a matter of months. The economy was in shambles, and the currency was practically worthless. This is the destructive power of hyperinflation. It erodes the value of currency rapidly and leads to economic instability. So next time you hear someone suggest that a government should just print more money to solve its problems, remember the cautionary tale of Zimbabwe. Hyperinflation is a clear example of too much money devaluing a currency. And what happens when we have more money chasing the same amount of goods? Well, it's quite simple, really. Picture this: an overabundance of cash in circulation, but the number of goods and services remains unchanged. The result? An increased demand for limited resources. When we have more money, we naturally want to spend more, leading to a surge in demand. But what if the supply can't keep up? That's when we run into problems. Limited resources can't be multiplied at will, and finite goods can't suddenly become infinite. This imbalance between supply and demand results in price hikes, a phenomenon we call inflation. Imagine having trillions of dollars, but a loaf of bread costs billions. Sounds absurd, doesn't it? But that's precisely what happens when we print money without an increase in economic output. So, more money, more problems. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room: national debt. When we think about national debt, it's not as simple as a country owing money to others. It's a complex structure with many moving parts. In fact, countries often owe a significant portion of their debt to themselves. This might sound strange, but it's true. Entities like the Federal Reserve or Social Security hold a considerable chunk of a nation's debt. So what happens if a country defaults on its debt? Well, it's not a pretty picture. It can lead to economic instability and loss of investor confidence. However, countries with strong currencies, like the United States, are considered low risk for investors. This is because their economies are robust and they have a history of repaying their debts. Remember, debt is not just a number, it's a balancing act. It's about maintaining trust, managing risks, and ensuring economic stability. So, should we just start printing money willy-nilly? Well, as we've journeyed through this exploration, it's become clear that the answer is a resounding no. Money, while not possessing intrinsic value, gains its worth from our collective belief in its exchangeable nature and the trust we place in the systems that govern it. The story of money's evolution, from tangible commodities to the abstract concept of fiat currency, underscores this point. The dynamics of supply and demand, the harrowing tales of hyperinflation, the delicate balance of limited resources and finite goods, they all highlight the same lesson. Reckless money printing can erode its value, disrupt economies, and create an imbalance that's hard to rectify. The national debt isn't a simple IOU that can be paid off with a printing spree. It's a complex, intricate structure that requires careful management. Remember, if money grew on trees, it would be as valuable as leaves.